On my YouTube channels, I sometimes discuss the benefits of AI as an accessibility aid. For example, in developing strategies to help you compensate for executive dysfunction, or serving as a sounding board to bounce some ideas off or to get some feedback about, for example, a social situation where you were struggling to read people's reactions or what they might have been feeling. It can serve various functions like that. And what I often encounter is this wall of black and white thinking and moral perfectionism by some folks who've decided that AI is the devil and that nothing good can come of AI. And what often gets thrown back at me are arguments that I raise in my videos, concerns that are, I think, legitimate, but they're weaponized, I feel, and used against any other discussion of AI. It's basically like, well, because these are the problems associated with AI, you shouldn't be talking about it. And I don't like it. And you should not be supporting this. And you're being an apologist, or you're excusing or enabling. And to me, I see that and I'm like, well, the internet is a marketplace of ideas. I'm sharing my ideas. If you would like to be open to some new ideas or other discussions, engage with my content. If you don't want to, then don't engage with it. It's okay that you have an opinion that doesn't agree with mine. I think that's the beautiful thing about diversity and, diversity of thought. And it's great that you have your own opinion, that you've arrived at your own conclusions, and that you have a moral stance on an issue that's important to you. I support you in that. At the same time, you don't have to come and impose that on me. If me openly discussing the benefits of AI as an accessibility aid is triggering for you, don't engage with the content. I encourage you not to do that. I had somebody accuse me of being selfish for suggesting it can have benefits as an accessibility aid. Classic black and white thinking and moral perfectionism. Somebody responded in this fashion. They said, everything AI does can be done better by just Googling, or God forbid, thinking for 5 minutes. Notwithstanding that Google is now integrating AI anyway, so Googling is basically going to be AI integrated moving forward anyway. And there's some criticism here is that I'm not using my critical thinking skills, which is a little bit reductive, and it's also presumptuous to assume that I can't use AI and my critical thinking skills in conjunction. There is evidence that if you haven't developed critical thinking skills yet and you become reliant on AI, you don't get the opportunity to do so, and that makes sense. Just like cheating, if you're in school and you're a school-aged kid and you're not learning to actually apply your critical thinking skills and construct individual unique thoughts and synthesize information, that makes sense. But this is a very generalizing statement. This person then goes on to say, no catastrophic and unnecessary climate consequences. Okay, so AI is associated with excessive water consumption. Personally, I find my own ways of addressing that. I think it is a structural issue that needs to be addressed by tech companies and regulators. But in the interim, I do, rather than 2 showers a day, I use 1 shower a day, and I'm reducing my water footprint if I'm going to use AI. That's a simple little hack that I personally, for me, works for me in terms of going, okay, well, this is how I compensate for my excessive water consumption. Not that it is that huge. According to what one estimate I recently read was, it was like one search is less than a teaspoon or a tablespoon, one or the other, I can't remember, of water consumption. And then the person says no smoothing of the brain. Again, this appeal to the fear around the lack of brain development because of AI over-reliance. I mean, that argument can be made of all technology in which you are suspending your capacity to use your critical thinking skills and being overly reliant. And I'm sure that argument was used in all other forms of technology preceding this, like smartphones and tablets, right? Because people are exposed to a new technology, there's always a risk associated with it. But this is kind of technological alarmism, classic technological alarmism. Not that I don't see that there's a value in questioning the ethics or raising these concerns. And I think as a neurodivergent, many of us are social justice and environment justice oriented, and it's very important for us that we follow our cause and that we, support it. And then this person says, no further insulating yourself from the ability to interact with the world, which I don't quite understand that argument, because when you use the internet, computers, technology, there is always going to be a degree of insulation. And this kind of response, it can be grounded in logic and reasoning, but it's okay that this person has their point of view, but their approach right now, as I see it, coming and commenting and pushing this, what I see as a pretty extreme point of view, is very dogmatic. It is, these are the repercussions, these are the problems, you shouldn't be using it, and God forbid you should use it, because, and there's an implication there that you are lazy. that you are not being a responsible person, you're being unethical, right? There's all this subtext in people raising these concerns and coming at you when you try to have an open discussion about this. And again, this is very classic black and white thinking, which many of us as neurodivergents do struggle with. And I find it problematic for one primary reason. I mean, I've given you a whole bunch of other reasons, but the thing that most bothers me about this is that I go into the world as an autistic ADHDer, and I want to openly discuss my thoughts and my ideas. And neurotypicals don't like that kind of open discussion, and they shut you down. They say, that doesn't make sense. Why are you talking about that? That's irrelevant. I'm not interested in the depth of your thought about this specific topic. I want to talk about something I'm passionate about, and I get shut down and told, you shouldn't think that way, or that's not important, or this or that, right? Some kind of dismissal and some kind of hand-waving response that minimizes what's important to me or what's helpful for me. And when I get this kind of response online to my exploring of the possible applications of AI as an accessibility tool to help neurodivergents, it feels like I'm right back there and I'm having a neurotypical person tell me I don't have the right to speak or openly discuss my ideas or share something I'm passionate about or interested in. I come to the internet seeking freedom of expression, to be able to find people I can exchange ideas with, not be dogmatically told how I should perceive a certain issue according to their worldview or their concerns. And it's problematic because I do share a lot of those concerns. They are relevant and I do raise them, but this person comes in and fires from the hip and starts, it feels like very much like I'm being attacked. And I think this does a great disservice to us as a community when we're seeking connection, understanding, mutual aid, and also trying to find resources to support us in navigating a neurotypical world. And the second big reason here is I'm discussing this, again, as an accessibility aid to help neurodivergence. And if somebody a neurodivergent comes and says, you shouldn't be using it, you don't have a right to use it, there are huge moral implications, and you should just use your brain, it's again like I'm back in that spot of helplessness as a child, surrounded by neurotypicals who tell me, you should be able to figure it out. You don't need assistance. You don't need accommodations. You don't need assistance of any sort. Just do the work. Like, why can't you figure out how to do the work? You should be able to do this. A lot of shooting there, right? And I think this is not the person that I grew up to become, as somebody who's willing to sit there and be told that and be minimized and dismissed and attacked. And I think it behooves us as neurodivergents, conversing with other neurodivergents in online spaces, to be cognizant to the extent to which you are enacting that behavior on your fellow neurodivergents. If you have an axe to grind, maybe step back and don't comment. If you have something constructive to add, by all means, let's have an exchange of ideas. But if you are going to attack someone, and this definitely felt like an attack, as are many of the responses to my exploration of the value of AI for neurodivergence, then maybe keep it to yourself. I do not deserve to be attacked by somebody who has a differing point of view, least of all from a fellow neurodivergent, because we are on the same side here. As I see it, we're trying to find a way to build a better and more just and equitable world that caters to some extent to our needs, not completely, but adjusts itself rather than purely being designed by and for neurotypicals. We want a world in which we can flourish. And that is the primary reason I have my YouTube account, is to exchange ideas and explore ways to empower neurodivergents and help them to flourish, and also to combat structural oppression. You unwittingly become an agent of structural oppression when you shut down a neurodivergent person who's trying to openly express themselves and share ideas and explore assistance for themselves and for fellow neurodivergents. Have you had this kind of response when you've spoken up in online spaces by fellow neurodivergents? Have you encountered this kind of dogmatism, whether it's about AI or any other topic? I know there are many of you who will watch this video and who are anti-AI, which, I appreciate you, and I think there's very much validity to a lot of your concerns. I would want to encourage you watching this video to not respond in a knee-jerk fashion and fire off an attack and a criticism of me because you don't agree broadly with AI and because I'm discussing this as a concern that's come up for me. I don't want you to read any of this or hear any of this as being an attempt by me to justify, be an apologist, excuse unethical AI-related behavior, environmentally destructive behavior. Rather, I hope that you can hear this in the spirit in which it's being conveyed, which is a concern about behavior and discussions and how neurodivergents engage with other neurodivergents in online spaces, and the extent to which we all, even I'm not immune to this, we are all prone to falling into our own form of dogmatism when we feel like we have the moral high ground and we engage in moral perfectionism around an issue that we're very passionate about. I would love to hear all your thoughts.